It started like any other quiet morning on Earth. People were going about their daily lives unaware that far beyond the skies, an ancient council of powerful beings was watching. They were called the Galactic Council, a group of highly intelligent civilizations that observed younger worlds from a distance. For centuries, they had kept their eyes on Earth, curious about how humans lived, fought, and dreamed. But on that day, something changed. Something that made even the mighty council feel fear for the first time in thousands of years. In the early hours, strange signals began echoing through the deep void of space. The council's communication chambers filled with a low rhythmic pulse, something they had never heard before. It wasn't random cosmic noise. It was deliberate, structured, and filled with a strange energy that seemed alive. The members of the council leaned closer to their displays, trying to decode it. The pulse carried an unsettling message, a warning that a hostile force was moving toward Earth. The message spread like fire among the council's worlds. Every species in that chamber felt an unshakable sense of dread. They had witnessed countless cosmic wars, but this felt different. The energy signature in that signal came from outside their known galaxy, a region of space so dark and uncharted that even the council avoided it. They called it the Silent Rift, a place where light itself seemed afraid to travel. At first, the council hoped it was just a cosmic event, maybe a collapsing star or a magnetic anomaly. But within hours, their long-range sensors picked up movement. Massive fleets, dark and silent, cutting through the vacuum like shadows. These ships didn't belong to any known civilization. They didn't communicate, didn't answer calls, and their trajectory was clear. They were heading directly toward Earth. On Earth, no one knew what was coming. People were busy with their ordinary problems, traffic jams, deadlines, family dinners. Satellites began picking up small irregularities in orbit, strange distortions that scientists couldn't explain. Some thought it was a malfunction. Others whispered about UFOs. But no one imagined that an invasion was brewing just beyond the moon's shadow. Meanwhile, in the council's grand chamber, chaos was rising. The elders debated furiously. Some wanted to intervene, to protect the fragile world they had watched grow from primitive life into a civilization capable of reaching the stars. Others argued it was not their place. Their laws forbade interference in the development of lesser species. They could observe but never interfere, no matter what. But as the Dark Fleet drew closer, the younger members of the council began to question those laws. Were they really going to sit and watch as an entire world was destroyed? On the planet's surface, a handful of scientists and military operators began noticing something strange. Radar systems flickered, communication satellites went offline for seconds at a time, and faint electromagnetic waves pulsed across the skies. A few brave individuals tried to warn the authorities, but their words were drowned in disbelief. It wasn't until people began capturing strange lights above the atmosphere that panic slowly started to spread. The council could see everything from their orbiting stations, Earth's confusion, its fragile attempts to understand the unknown, and the Dark Fleet closing in. The leader of the council, an ancient being who had seen galaxies born and die, watched in silence. His eyes reflected the blue of Earth, and for the first time in countless centuries, he looked uncertain. He knew that if they broke their laws and interfered, it could change the balance of the cosmos forever. But if they did nothing, billions of innocent lives would be lost. Reports from the council's outer scouts confirmed the worst fears. The fleet was massive, thousands of colossal ships powered by technology far beyond anything known. They moved with eerie precision, surrounding Earth's orbit like a tightening net. Still, not a single signal was sent, not a word, not a demand, just silence and presence. It was as if these beings didn't come to negotiate, they came to erase. Down on Earth, governments scrambled to make sense of the situation. The skies lit up with strange phenomena. The auroras danced far beyond the poles, colors shifting into unnatural patterns. Animals became restless, birds flew in chaotic circles, and the air carried a faint vibration as though the world itself sensed what was coming. News outlets couldn't hide it anymore. The images from telescopes were too clear. Something massive was up there. Inside one of the council's observation halls, a young member stared at the holographic display of Earth. He saw cities glowing in the night, oceans shimmering under the moonlight, and millions of tiny lights, human lives, burning bright. "They don't even know," he whispered. They don't even know they're about to face extinction." His words echoed through the hall, and for a moment, even the oldest members fell silent. Some of the council's scientists proposed using their technology to create a shield around Earth, a temporary barrier that could buy time. But that idea was quickly dismissed. Interference of that kind would expose their existence, something forbidden by ancient decree. The leader closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility crush him. He remembered the last time they had interfered with another world centuries ago, and how it had ended in chaos. The memory haunted them all. Still, as the minutes passed, the tension grew unbearable. The Dark Fleet was now within striking distance. The first faint disturbances began to ripple through Earth's magnetosphere. Power grids fluctuated, navigation systems failed, and the sky shimmered with unnatural waves of light. People around the world stepped outside, staring upward in confusion and fear. The Galactic Council watched helplessly. They could only observe and hope the humans found a way to survive. In their hearts, they admired humanity's resilience, their ability to unite in moments of crisis to fight against impossible odds. Maybe, just maybe, Earth would surprise them once again. But deep down, everyone in that chamber knew the truth. The power approaching Earth wasn't like anything they had ever faced. It wasn't driven by greed or conquest. It was something far older, something that thrived on destruction itself. And as the first shadows of the fleet darkened Earth's orbit, the Council could only watch in terror, wondering if this was the end of one of the most promising worlds they had ever known. People on Earth began recording strange events, lights vanishing in the night sky, stars blinking out for seconds at a time, and strange sounds echoing through the atmosphere like deep, distant thunder. The scientists tried to explain it as magnetic storms, but soon, even they fell silent. The truth was too big, too terrifying to comprehend. As the night deepened, the dark shapes finally became visible to the naked eye. Massive, floating silhouettes blocked the stars, moving in silence. The world froze. Every government, every scientist, every person looked up, realizing in that moment that humanity was no longer alone, and maybe never had been. The Council's members leaned forward, their hearts heavy, their minds racing with fear and regret. They had the power to stop this, but their laws chained them. The leader whispered softly, "Forgive us. Children of Earth, the stars are not always kind." His voice trembled with guilt as the first wave of the Dark Fleet descended into the atmosphere, cloaked in shadow. Alarms echoed through the council halls. They had seen wars. They had seen extinction, but never had they felt so powerless. And so began the longest night in Earth's history, a night watched by countless eyes across the stars. A night when the protectors of the galaxy could do nothing but witness, as darkness stretched its hand toward a blue world that had never stopped reaching for the light. The night the Dark Fleet appeared above Earth, the whole planet froze in disbelief. People around the world stared up at the sky, some from crowded city rooftops, others from lonely farm fields, each seeing the same terrifying sight: huge black shapes drifting across the stars. They moved so silently that it felt like time itself had stopped. For a few moments, no one spoke, no one moved. It was as if humanity had collectively forgotten how to breathe. News channels everywhere went wild. Scientists, governments, and even ordinary people tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Some said it was a massive meteor shower. Others believed it was a secret military test. But deep down, everyone felt the same thing. It wasn't natural. The way those ships hung in the sky, the way the air around them shimmered, it didn't belong to this world. Within hours, the internet exploded with shaky videos and photos. Millions of people posted their own sightings. The footage all looked the same. Dark silhouettes gliding silently above the atmosphere, reflecting faint flashes of light. No sound, no message, no contact. Just quiet movement like shadows watching from above. In the White Sands Observatory, a group of astronomers stayed up all night, their faces pale as they analyzed the data. The objects were massive, far larger than any known spacecraft. They were not orbiting like satellites. Instead, they were holding position, fixed above specific points on the planet. That was the first detail that made scientists nervous. It wasn't random. The ships were deliberately positioning themselves over major population centers. By morning, the world had changed. Panic began to spread. Markets crashed. Airports were flooded with people trying to leave cities, and governments declared emergency meetings. Radio frequencies were jammed by strange static, as if the atmosphere itself was being disrupted. Yet even with all that chaos, no attack came. The ships just stayed there, floating silently above Earth like dark clouds. Far away, in the chambers of the Galactic Council, tension filled the air. Every member sat in silence, staring at the holographic projection of Earth. The fleet had surrounded the planet completely. Thousands of ships blocked every exit point in and out of the solar system. The Council's sensors could detect faint energy readings. Something was building up inside those vessels. One of the younger Council members broke the silence. "They're not attacking," he said quietly. "They're waiting." The leader of the Council didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the blue planet below. He could sense the fear rising among the humans, the confusion spreading through their minds. The Council had always believed that humanity would one day join the galactic community, that their courage and creativity would earn them a place among the stars. But now it looked like they might never get that chance. Back on Earth, military bases around the world went into full alert. Fighter jets were scrambled. Missiles were armed. Yet despite all the preparation, no one dared to fire first. Every leader knew one wrong move could mean disaster. The alien ships had shown no aggression yet, but their presence alone was enough to paralyze the world. In one small town, people gathered in open fields, praying, holding hands, and staring upward. Some cried, others whispered words of hope. Even those who didn't believe in anything found themselves wishing for help from somewhere, anywhere. As the day turned to night again, something strange began to happen. The ship started to glow faintly. It wasn't bright, just a dim, cold light pulsing in slow rhythm like the beat of a heart. The light spread from one ship to another until the entire fleet shimmered in unison. It looked almost beautiful, but beneath that beauty was a sense of danger like calm waves before a storm. Across the globe, power systems began to fail. Lights flickered, communications went down, and satellites lost contact. It was as if the fleet was draining the planet's energy, feeding on its magnetic field. Scientists tried to explain it, but every theory fell apart under the weight of the unknown. Humanity was standing at the edge of something far beyond its understanding. In space, the Galactic Council watched in growing fear. They had seen many invasions before, but this was different. The energy signatures from the Dark Fleet were unlike anything in their records. It wasn't technology, it was alive. The ships themselves were living machines, part organism, part metal, operating with a single, united consciousness. They weren't just visiting Earth. They were feeding on it. The Council's leader clenched his hands. He had spent eons protecting the law of non-interference, but now he questioned its purpose. "We can't just watch this," he said softly, his voice trembling. "If we let them take that planet, what does that make us?" The others hesitated. They knew breaking the law could unravel everything they had built. But as the Dark Fleet began to pulse faster, as the light of Earth's cities started flickering out one by one, the Council realized that they might not have a choice anymore. Down on Earth, confusion turned to despair. The skies darkened even at midday, filled with strange clouds that shimmered faintly. People could feel the air vibrating as if something huge was breathing above them. Governments tried to calm the population, but their words meant little when the entire world could see the truth. Despite the fear, small groups of people around the world began to act. Scientists set up makeshift laboratories to study the signals coming from the ships. Amateur radio operators started decoding the strange pulses echoing through the air. And amid all that chaos, a few messages began to make sense. Short, fragmented signals hidden within the static. They weren't from the invaders. They were coming from deep space. Unbeknownst to Earth, the Galactic Council had secretly sent out a beacon, calling for help from their ancient allies. It was a desperate move, one that could expose their existence. But they had no choice. The fleet's power was growing stronger by the hour. If it wasn't stopped soon, Earth would be left a lifeless shell. Meanwhile, people across the planet began to feel strange sensations, vibrations beneath their feet, an odd pressure in the air and a constant hum that never stopped. Some said they could hear whispers when they closed their eyes, as if something was speaking directly into their minds. It was terrifying and mesmerizing at the same time. The world's leaders gathered in a secret meeting underground, their faces pale with exhaustion. No one had slept in days. "We can't fight something like this," one of them said quietly. "It's not a war we can win." But somewhere deep inside Earth's heart, there was still a spark of defiance. Scientists, engineers, and dreamers refused to give up. They started working on anything that could give them an edge. Communication devices, energy shields, even experimental spacecrafts. They knew the odds were impossible, but humanity had always done its best work when standing on the edge of extinction. In the Galactic Council, the leader finally made his choice. "Send the message," he said. "We can't just watch anymore." His words sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. For the first time in millennia, the Council was going to break its sacred law. A surge of energy burst from their massive station, traveling across the void toward Earth. The humans didn't see it, but some felt it. A sudden warmth in the air, a brief moment of peace amid the fear. The Council's signal carried a message of protection, a small shield of light that surrounded the planet's atmosphere. Invisible yet powerful, it wouldn't last long, but it was enough to buy time. The fleet seemed to hesitate. The pulsing slowed. For the first time since it appeared, the dark silence broke. A deep vibrating sound echoed across the sky, something between a growl and a whisper. It wasn't words, but every living thing on Earth could feel its meaning. It was a warning. In that moment, the Galactic Council realized the invaders had noticed them. Their secret act had been exposed. And now the danger wasn't just Earth's. It was everyone's. The leader stared at the blue planet glowing faintly under its new shield. "We've crossed the line," he murmured. "Now there's no turning back." Far below on the surface of Earth, people looked up at the sky, seeing the ship still hovering silently above. They didn't know what had happened, but for the first time in days, the fear in their hearts eased just a little. Somewhere deep down they felt it. Someone out there was watching, and maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone in this fight. The world had changed in just a few days. The skies that once looked peaceful were now filled with strange shadows, and even the stars seemed dimmer. People could no longer tell if it was night or day. The dark fleet still hovered silently above, watching, waiting. No one knew what they wanted, and that uncertainty made it even more frightening. In the biggest cities, fear had turned into chaos. Supermarkets were empty, streets were filled with anxious people, and power outages had become normal. Governments broadcast calming messages, asking everyone to stay indoors, but deep down no one truly believed it would help. The whole world was holding its breath, waiting for the next move from the unknown visitors. But somewhere far away beyond what human eyes could see, the Galactic Council was working in secret. They had already broken their ancient law by sending a protective shield around Earth, and now they were debating their next step. Inside their glowing chamber, filled with light from 1,000 stars, every member could feel the weight of their decision. One of the younger members stood up and spoke. "If we stop now, Earth will fall. The shield won't last more than a few cycles. We need to do more." The leader's voice was calm but heavy. "Every move we make draws attention. They already know we've interfered. If they find our location, they won't stop with Earth. They'll come for us too." Silence filled the chamber. They all knew he was right. The invaders weren't just an ordinary species. They were something much older, something that had destroyed countless worlds long before Earth even existed. They were known in ancient records as the Devourers, a Igbo force that moved from one star system to another, feeding on energy and leaving nothing behind. Back on Earth, scientists finally began to notice the faint glow surrounding the planet. They didn't know it came from the Galactic Council, but they could tell it was some sort of protective field. Instruments showed that the strange electromagnetic interference had weakened slightly, and the ships in orbit had stopped moving closer. For the first time in days, people began to hope. In makeshift labs and underground bunkers, teams of experts worked around the clock. They were trying to understand the signal patterns coming from the alien fleet. The patterns weren't random. They carried rhythm and sequence, like a language. But it was unlike any human communication. Some scientists believed it wasn't meant for humans at all. It was more like the ships were talking to each other. As the shield held steady, life on Earth began to adjust to this new reality. Families stayed close, people gathered around radios, and stories of strange dreams began spreading. Many said they saw bright lights in their sleep or felt like someone was whispering inside their minds. Some believed the dreams were warnings, Others thought they were messages from whatever force had protected them. Meanwhile, in the Council's orbiting station, the leader gathered a small group of trusted members. They needed answers about the invaders. The Council had technology that allowed them to send invisible probes, small energy particles that could slip past the enemy's detection fields. If they could get close enough, they might learn what the fleet was truly doing. When the probes reached Earth's orbit, what they found shocked everyone. The ships weren't just floating aimlessly. They were constructing something. Between their massive bodies, a network of energy threads was forming, glowing faintly like a spiderweb across the upper atmosphere. The readings showed it was pulling energy directly from Earth's magnetic field. The planet's core was being drained slowly, almost unnoticeably. The Council realized that the fleet wasn't here to conquer humanity. They were here to consume the planet itself. On Earth, strange natural events began to unfold. Volcanoes trembled, ocean currents shifted, and magnetic compasses spun wildly. Scientists connected the dots and realized the planet's magnetic balance was collapsing. Still, no one could explain how or why. In one research station hidden deep in the mountains, a small group of people worked without rest. They had intercepted a faint signal that didn't match the alien frequencies. It was soft and rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. After hours of analysis, they noticed it pulsed at the same rhythm as the mysterious shield protecting Earth. They didn't know it, but they were detecting the Galactic Council's energy signature. They began to wonder if someone, or something, out there was helping them. That thought gave them strength to keep working. The Council watched as human scientists slowly uncovered pieces of the puzzle. It impressed them. Despite being technologically weaker, humanity's curiosity and courage stood out. They refused to give up, even when faced with something beyond imagination. But time was running out. The shield protecting Earth had started to flicker. The leader of the Council knew it couldn't hold forever. "We must prepare for direct contact," he said. The others looked at him in shock. To reveal themselves to a young species was forbidden. But desperate times left no other choice. Back on Earth, the situation was getting worse. Power grids were failing again, and the sky was now covered in strange streaks of light, remnants of the alien web stretching across the upper atmosphere. The air carried a faint humming sound that never stopped, like the whole world was vibrating. People could feel it in their bones. Then something unexpected happened. For the first time, one of the ships moved. Slowly, it descended closer to Earth's surface, stopping above the ocean. Its massive shadow covered hundreds of miles. The water below churned violently as the ship emitted a low, deep sound. Everyone on the planet heard it, even those thousands of miles away. It wasn't just a noise, it was communication. All around the world, people reported the same feeling, a sudden rush of emotion, a strange mix of sadness and fear. Some fainted, others cried without knowing why. It was as if the ship was reaching into their minds, searching for something. In the Council's chamber, alarms went off. "They're scanning human consciousness," one member said. "They're trying to understand how they think, how they feel." The leader's face grew tense. "They're preparing to decide if humans are worth saving, or if they're simply part of the planet's energy." The idea was horrifying. If the invaders determined that humans were nothing more than part of Earth's resource, they would be wiped out along with everything else. The Council had to act fast. The leader sent a signal directly through the shield, a soft wave of light invisible to human eyes. It carried a message, one that certain people on Earth might sense subconsciously. It wasn't words, but a feeling, a quiet whisper that told them to look deeper, to trust their instincts, to fight back in any way they could. Within hours, some of Earth's brightest scientists began noticing new energy readings. They realized that the shield wasn't just protection, it could be strengthened. They didn't know where the energy came from, but by aligning certain frequencies with it, they could reinforce it. It was like tuning a radio to the right station. In hidden labs and observatories, they worked tirelessly. People who had never met before started connecting ideas, driven by a strange sense of unity. The more they worked, the more the shield stabilized. Humanity was unknowingly working side by side with the Galactic Council, fighting for its own survival. The invaders noticed the change. Their ships began to shift formation, spreading wider, tightening their web of energy. The sky darkened even more, and flashes of lightning streaked across the clouds. It looked like the heavens themselves were at war. The Council's leader knew the time for hiding was almost over. If they wanted to save Earth, they would have to reveal themselves completely. But before making that choice, he looked at the blue planet one more time. Through the layers of clouds and chaos, he saw something remarkable. People helping one another, sharing food, protecting strangers, comforting children. Despite their fear, humanity hadn't turned on itself. That was the moment he decided. They are worth saving, he said quietly. A deep silence filled the chamber. The others nodded slowly. The time for rules had ended. The time for action had come. Far below, on the surface of Earth, the clouds began to glow softly, and for a brief moment, the world felt warm again. People lifted their eyes and saw faint trails of light weaving through the sky, gentle, shimmering ribbons that looked like falling stars. They didn't know it yet, but that light carried the promise of hope. The Galactic Council had made their decision. The fight for Earth was no longer just humanity's battle. It had become a battle for the soul of the galaxy itself. The night when the skies began to glow faintly with strange flowing lights was the first time people on Earth felt something other than fear. Those glowing streams drifted across the darkness like ribbons of hope. They were soft and silent, yet powerful enough to calm the hearts of millions who had spent days terrified of the unknown ships above. Families stood outside their homes, looking up, whispering prayers and wondering what it all meant. In cities where chaos once ruled, the glow in the sky made people pause. It was as if the planet itself had started to fight back. Power grids flickered on for the first time in days. Communication lines that had been silent suddenly came alive with signals again. Radios picked up faint static followed by rhythmic pulses, strange repeating patterns that scientists believed were not random. Someone, or something, was trying to communicate. Deep beneath the Earth in a massive underground research facility, a small group of scientists worked without sleep. They had been monitoring the pulses in the atmosphere and noticed something incredible. The energy protecting Earth was growing stronger. The shield that had been flickering was now stabilizing. The readings showed harmony between the planet's natural magnetic field and the mysterious energy coming from space. What they didn't know was that the Galactic Council had strengthened their efforts. After watching humanity's courage and unity, they decided to fully step in. But they had to be careful. Revealing themselves could cause panic or even attract the invaders' attention faster. So they worked quietly, sending waves of protective energy through invisible channels, syncing it with the efforts of Earth's own scientists. Together, though they didn't realize it, humans and the Council were saving the planet side by side. But above Earth, the Dark Fleet was not still. The alien ships had noticed the resistance. Their glowing patterns grew more intense, shifting from calm blue tones to harsh crimson flashes. It was their form of anger, a warning that they were aware of what was happening. From the Council's orbiting chambers, they could see the energy readings spiking. The invaders were preparing for something bigger. In one of the Council's meeting halls, a young observer spoke in a trembling voice. They've begun the harvest process. They're going to pull energy directly from Earth's core. The leader closed his eyes for a long moment, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. If they start that process, it will tear the planet apart, he said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Earth had hours, maybe a day, before irreversible damage began. Back on Earth, strange weather patterns appeared across the world. Storms formed where there had been none. The sky lit up with streaks of green and purple, and compasses spun wildly. But amid the confusion, a few people began to hear a sound, a low hum, almost like music. It wasn't coming from any source they could see. It vibrated through the ground, through walls, through every living thing. Some described it as comforting, others as haunting. In truth, it was the shield's frequency harmonizing with Earth itself. The Galactic Council had found a way to let the planet defend itself by amplifying its natural energy field. Earth was alive, and for the first time it was fighting back. The invaders reacted immediately. Their ships began to shift positions, forming tight clusters that glowed with red light. The oceans beneath them started to ripple unnaturally, as if being pulled by invisible hands. The Council watched in horror as energy spikes appeared near Earth's poles, points where the planet's magnetic field was strongest. The invaders were targeting those areas first, trying to break the shield from its roots. At the same time, on the planet's surface, scientists noticed the same thing. They realized that the strange lights in the northern and southern skies were changing shape, forming swirling rings that seemed to pull energy upward. "They're attacking the poles," one scientist said, his voice shaking. "If they succeed, the shield will collapse." It was then that people began to act. Governments, scientists, and ordinary citizens worked together like never before. Resources were pooled, radio networks were reconnected, and every surviving satellite was aimed at the sky. Teams across continents coordinated their data, trying to find weak points in the alien formation. The Council, seeing this unexpected unity, decided to take a greater risk. They sent a coded message directly into Earth's atmosphere, a signal that could be picked up by the planet's most advanced listening stations. It wasn't written in any known language, but through mathematical patterns and harmonics the message was clear. You are not alone. Do not give up. When the signal was received, the world changed again. The message spread quickly across nations, shared by scientists and news networks. Many didn't understand it fully, but those words, "You are not alone," gave everyone something priceless: hope. For the first time, humanity knew that someone out there was helping them. In the Council's chamber, the leader watched the planet glowing faintly with new energy. "They're responding," he said with a small smile. "They understand." But hope came with a cost. The invaders detected the message too. The moment the signal went out, the Dark Fleet shifted its focus. Their ships turned their attention toward the source of the energy, the hidden shield and the Council's frequencies. They had discovered the interference. The first counterattack came suddenly. Bolts of dark energy erupted from the alien ships, striking through the atmosphere like black lightning. The Council's sensors flared red. "They're attacking the shield directly," one of the members shouted. The energy hit with such force that even humans on Earth felt it. The ground trembled, skies darkened, and for a few terrifying seconds the glowing lights above faded. People screamed, thinking it was over. But then, to everyone's surprise, the light came back, brighter than before. The Council's leader had redirected their main energy core, pouring everything they had into keeping the shield alive. The decision drained their systems dangerously, but he didn't hesitate. "If Earth falls," he said, "so does hope for the galaxy." Down below, humans didn't know what was happening beyond the sky, but they could feel it. Something deep inside them told them not to give up. Every radio tower, every power plant, every remaining satellite began transmitting frequencies that matched the shield's hum. They were amplifying it, unknowingly helping the Council push back. The sky erupted with color. For miles, people saw patterns of blue and gold twisting around the alien fleet. It looked like a storm made of light. The ships fired again, beams of dark red cutting through the sky, but this time they didn't reach the ground. The shield held strong, deflecting the attacks like waves against a rock. Inside one small observatory, a young researcher stared at the screen, tears in her eyes. "It's working," she whispered. "We're actually fighting back." The Galactic Council could feel it too. For the first time, the invaders were being pushed backward. Their formation began to break. Several of their ships started retreating higher into orbit, their crimson glow flickering weakly. The Council's decision to unite with humanity had worked, at least for now. But victory was fragile. The leader knew the enemy would not give up so easily. The Devourers had conquered hundreds of worlds before. They always adapted, always came back stronger. "We've only delayed them," the leader said softly. "They will return." Still, as he looked at Earth shining brightly beneath them, he couldn't help but feel proud. Against impossible odds, a young, fragile species had stood together, not because of power or technology, but because of unity and courage. On Earth, people celebrated quietly. They didn't know if the danger was truly over, but for the first time in weeks, the stars were visible again. The ships had pulled back, the sky was calm, and life slowly began to move again. But high above, in the endless dark of space, the Council watched as a new movement appeared on their sensors, something much larger. much older, stirring in the void beyond the fleet. The leader's heart grew heavy. He knew what it meant. The true force behind the invasion was finally awakening, and while Earth celebrated, believing the worst had passed, the real battle was only begun. The tension over Earth's skies was rising with every passing hour. What had started as a faint light beyond the clouds was now visible to everyone. From busy city streets to quiet villages, people everywhere looked up, confused and scared. The strange glowing shapes were no longer just stories whispered online or shown in news flashes. They were real, hovering high above the atmosphere like silent watchers. Governments were trying to calm the public, but even world leaders didn't have answers anymore. The scientists on the ground kept sending reports that didn't make sense, and communication with the Galactic Council had become unstable. Something huge was unfolding and no one could stop it. Up in orbit, the Galactic Council's station was surrounded by unease. They had seen worlds fall before, but never had they faced something this unexpected. Every screen on the bridge showed the same thing: dozens of unidentified crafts surrounding Earth's orbit. Their movements were sharp, organized, and full of purpose. The council members stood around a massive glowing table, arguing in different languages and tones. Some believed this was an invasion. Others thought it was a message. But no one could deny the fear growing inside them. One council observer, an older being who had seen hundreds of galactic conflicts, whispered quietly, "They're not just visiting. They're testing us." The word sent a chill through everyone in the room. The energy readings from the approaching fleet were unlike anything recorded before. The Earth's defense systems were being jammed and satellites were falling one by one. Yet, for reasons no one could explain, the crafts hadn't attacked. They simply hovered, watching, waiting, observing the chaos spreading below. Down on Earth, confusion was turning into panic. Cities began to shut down. Flights were grounded. Power grids flickered as global communication networks struggled to stay online. In a small research facility hidden deep in the mountains, a group of scientists worked day and night trying to decode the signals coming from the orbiting crafts. The data showed strange repeating patterns, as if someone was trying to communicate, but through a code that no human language could understand. One young researcher noticed something unusual. The signals had a rhythm, a pulse, almost like a heartbeat. When slowed down, they revealed sequences that looked mathematical but organic at the same time. She believed the crafts weren't trying to destroy Earth, but to study it in a way beyond human understanding. The others were doubtful, but her theory gave a small spark of hope to a world drowning in fear. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council's members were facing their own crisis. Their laws forbade them from interfering directly in planetary conflicts unless the world asked for help. But Earth couldn't even communicate properly. The Council debated endlessly, whether to intervene and risk war, or to stand aside and watch one of the youngest civilizations in the galaxy face an unknown enemy alone. For every vote to act, there was another reminding them of the disasters that had happened when interference went wrong in the past. As hours turned into days, the tension reached its peak. Strange electrical storms began to spread over several continents. Lights danced across the sky like auroras, even in places where they had never appeared before. The news channel showed terrifying images of the clouds splitting open with flashes of blue light. Yet amid all the chaos, there was still no direct attack. It was as if the invaders were preparing for something far beyond anyone's imagination. Inside a secret control center beneath the Earth's surface, the world's remaining leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. They had managed to create a small secure channel linked to the Galactic Council's main hub. The connection was unstable, filled with static and delays. Through the flickering screen, one of the council members appeared, his face pale and eyes full of regret. "We can see what's happening," he said slowly, "but we cannot interfere without your formal request." The Earth leaders exchanged tense looks. The realization hit them hard. No one knew who had the authority to make such a request. The world was too divided, too broken. Back on the surface, people were reacting in different ways. Some stayed home with their families, praying for safety. Others took to the streets looking for answers, demanding to know what the governments were hiding. Social media was flooded with videos of strange lights, vanishing aircrafts, and unexplained tremors. The internet became the only place where people could share information freely, even though no one knew which reports were real and which were not. In the middle of all this confusion, the young researcher from the mountain lab made a breakthrough. The coded signals, when played through a sound spectrum, produced a faint but distinct pattern, an image of a spiral galaxy, with Earth highlighted in its center. It wasn't a random message. It was a map. But what it meant, no one could tell. Some thought it was a warning. Others believed it was a test, a way to see if humans were ready to understand what was coming next. The Galactic Council, watching all this unfold, was filled with a strange sense of helplessness. They had the power to stop the invasion, but their own laws kept their hands tied. A few members secretly discussed breaking the rules. If we wait any longer, one said, we might lose them forever. But the Council's leader reminded them of the last time they had interfered, when they tried to save another world from destruction and ended up causing even greater chaos. Meanwhile, Earth's magnetic field started to fluctuate. Compasses spun wildly and strange sounds echoed through the skies, low vibrations that made windows tremble. People described hearing whispers like voices coming from nowhere. Scientists believed the incoming crafts were using frequencies that affected both machines and minds. The stress began to take a toll on everyone. Hospitals filled with patients suffering from anxiety, sleeplessness, and strange hallucinations. But amid the growing fear, something extraordinary happened. A single beam of light descended from one of the hovering crafts. It didn't destroy anything. It simply touched the ground in an open desert and stayed there, glowing softly. Military teams were sent to investigate, but every time they got close, their equipment stopped working. The air around the beam felt heavy, as if it was bending reality itself. The news spread like wildfire. The visitors had made their first move. The Galactic Council watched in silence, their screens showing the glowing beam stretching from the Earth to the sky. They've chosen, someone whispered. No one knew what that meant. Was it a signal of peace or the start of an invasion? The uncertainty was unbearable. The young researcher kept studying the light's data and discovered something astonishing. The energy signature matched the same pulse as the coded signals they'd received earlier. It wasn't a weapon. It was communication. The invaders weren't trying to destroy. They were trying to connect. She sent the findings to the world leaders, who debated for hours about how to respond. Finally, one leader stood up and said, "We can't fight something we don't understand. Maybe it's time we listen." The decision was made to send a response, not through words but through light. Scientists coordinated around the world, using satellites and radio towers to send a synchronized pulse mirroring the same frequency as the beam. It was humanity's way of saying, "But we hear you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the beam pulsed once, twice, and then the crafts above Earth began to move. Slowly, gracefully, they shifted position, aligning themselves in a perfect circle around the planet. The Galactic Council's chambers filled with quiet awe. "They've accepted," one of them murmured. No one knew what the next moment would bring, whether it was the beginning of a new era or the calm before the storm. Every human, every member of the council, held their breath. The lights in the sky flickered one last time, and then the signal vanished. The world went silent, and somewhere deep in the void, the watchers of the galaxy whispered among themselves, wondering if Earth had just passed a test, or unknowingly opened a door that could never be closed again. The world had gone quiet after the beam of light disappeared. It was a silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy, as if the air itself was waiting for something. People everywhere stared up at the sky, searching for the strange glowing crafts that had become part of their everyday fear. But now they were gone. The skies were empty again, almost too empty. Governments sent out jets to check the upper atmosphere, but there was no sign of movement, no signals, nothing but the soft hum of the wind. Some thought it was finally over. Others were sure that the real storm was yet to come. For the first time in weeks, the world began to take a breath. News channels replayed the same images of the disappearing lights over and over again, trying to explain what had happened, but no one had clear answers. Scientists talked about magnetic disturbances and unexplained radiation waves, while ordinary people called it a miracle. There were stories of people seeing strange dreams the night before the beam vanished. Dreams of bright cities floating in space and voices whispering messages of peace. Some believed it was the aliens trying to communicate one last time. Others thought it was the human mind trying to make sense of something far beyond its understanding. Up above, far beyond the range of Earth's telescopes, the Galactic Council station floated in silence too. The council members had watched the entire event unfold, from the first lights to the final pulse of the beam. Now they sat in uneasy quiet. The debate that had once filled the room had faded into a heavy stillness. They didn't know whether to feel relieved or worried. Their sensors still picked up faint traces of energy in the area around Earth, as if something invisible was still there, watching quietly. One of the older council members leaned back and whispered, "They didn't come to conquer. They came to test." No one disagreed. The energy readings, the communication patterns, the sudden withdrawal, it all fit a single idea. The visitors had come to see how humanity would respond when faced with something far greater than itself. And humanity, for all its fear and division, had chosen to listen instead of fight. That choice in the vast eyes of the galaxy meant something powerful. Down on Earth, life slowly began to return to normal, but nothing felt the same anymore. The events had left a deep mark on everyone. People who had once fought over borders and politics now spoke about unity and survival. For the first time, countries that had been enemies for generations started working together on research and recovery. The shared experience of standing on the edge of the unknown had reminded humanity how small it really was, and how strong it could be when united. In the mountain lab, the young researcher who had decoded the alien signal sat in front of her screen late one night. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. She kept going through the old data, trying to understand what the final pulse meant. She played the signal again, slowing it down more and more until it became a deep, steady vibration. That's when she noticed something strange. Hidden inside the signal's final wave was a faint pattern, almost like a message left behind. It wasn't in words, but in energy fluctuations. When converted to visual form, it showed an image, a sphere of light surrounded by smaller orbits with one of them glowing brighter than the rest. It was Earth, and under it a simple sequence of symbols that translated to one message: "We are watching." She sat there staring at the screen, her heart pounding. It wasn't a threat. It felt more like a promise or perhaps a reminder. The visitors hadn't left completely. They were still out there observing, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Would humans destroy themselves, or would they grow wiser after what they had just witnessed? She knew she couldn't tell the world yet. People were finally beginning to calm down. If they knew the visitors might still be nearby, fear would return. So she saved the data quietly and kept it locked away, deciding to study it in secret. Weeks turned into months. The skies remained clear, and no new strange lights appeared. Scientists published reports explaining the events as rare natural phenomena, though most of them didn't truly believe their own explanations. Governments quietly removed files and sealed documents that described the true scale of what had happened. But the people hadn't forgotten. Across the world, new movements started. Groups dedicated to searching the stars, sending peaceful signals, and preparing for future contact. Humanity had tasted something far greater than itself, and it had changed them forever. 1 year later, the world celebrated what people called the Day of Light. It became a global event not to remember fear, but to remember hope. Cities around the world switched off their lights for 1 hour, allowing everyone to look up at the stars together. Families gathered on rooftops, children pointed at constellations, and for a brief moment humanity was united again under one sky. It was as if everyone was silently saying, "We're still here and we're ready to learn." But high above the Earth, the Galactic Council continued their quiet discussions. The decision they had made, not to interfere, had weighed heavily on their conscience. They knew they had done the right thing according to their laws, but seeing how close humanity had come to destruction had left them uneasy. Some argued that maybe the rules needed to change, that perhaps the time had come for the galaxy to guide younger worlds more openly. Others warned that too much help could destroy the natural growth of a civilization. In the end, the Council agreed on one thing: Earth had potential. It had survived a test that few young planets ever passed. Late one night, the same researcher who had discovered the hidden message sat outside her lab, looking up at the stars. The wind was cold, and the night sky stretched endlessly above her. She thought about everything that had happened, the fear, the confusion, the moment of connection. She wondered if somewhere up there the visitors were looking back at her too. In her heart, she believed they were. Suddenly, her small radio receiver, which had been silent for months, came to life. It crackled softly, then played a faint sound. The same rhythm as before, the same pulse that had first started everything. Only this time it was slower, gentler, almost like a heartbeat. She froze, listening carefully. The sound faded after a few seconds, leaving only static behind. Her hands trembled slightly, but she smiled. It wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition. Somewhere beyond human reach, in the vast darkness of the galaxy, the visitors listened too. Their ships were invisible now, hidden in the folds of space. They had seen Earth's choice. They had witnessed humanity's fear, courage, and finally its decision to reach out with light instead of war. To them, it was proof that this small blue planet had taken its first true step toward joining the greater universe. The Galactic Council received a quiet transmission that night. It contained only 3 words. The test passed. It was sent by a source no one could trace. For the first time in centuries, the council chambers filled with applause. The message meant Earth was no longer considered a fragile world on the edge of destruction. It was now marked as a world of hope, capable of growth and ready for something bigger. On Earth, people continued with their lives, unaware of the decision made far beyond their sky. Children played, scientists researched, artists painted visions of glowing ships and peaceful skies. Humanity had changed, but in the simplest way possible, by choosing to believe that they were not alone, and that being watched wasn't something to fear, but something to live up to. That night, across the world, the stars seemed a little brighter. Maybe it was imagination, or maybe, just maybe, the visitors had sent one final silent message, a soft reminder that they were still out there keeping watch, waiting for the day when Earth would be ready to meet them again. And as the young researcher looked through her telescope, she whispered quietly to herself, "We're not alone anymore." It wasn't a statement of fear, it was a promise of hope. Because now humanity knew that somewhere out there, among billions of stars, someone was watching not to destroy, but to see how far the human spirit could go. The sky remained calm that night, but deep in the heart of every person who had lived through those strange days, a quiet thought lingered, that the visitors might return someday. Not as strangers, but as guides, as friends from beyond the stars, reminding everyone on Earth that sometimes the greatest battles are not fought with weapons, but with understanding, patience, and the courage to believe in something greater than fear.